Next topic is controversies in functional imaging, which is interesting because I thought that was the topic of the first talk. Um, because as you obviously know, what we taught you for the last 8 days is wrong.
I didn't say it's all wrong. I've gotten over that.
Yeah, well, the need to say it. Nevertheless, the message was there, Jack. So
what?
Anyway.
I'm not trying. I'm trying to be a positive person. I didn't insult anybody by name. I thought I was being particularly good.
All right, we're ready. We're ready when you are, of course.
Hang on. I have to export this thing to you, Mark. Oh, I did that. It's 11. Okay, wait. Okay, since Mark accused me of saying everybody was wrong, I should mention on the semantic selectivity paper, the results are really interesting. The results do not contradict any other study. I mean, they may contradict specific studies, but no generally agreed upon result, right? So if you look at where people think number-related areas are, in our semantic maps, that's where the number-related areas are. If you look at TPJ, all of the concepts in TPJ are social-related concepts. That's generally consistent for all of the semantic selectivity. So if there is some functional assignment of a region, the semantic selectivity of that region for narrative semantics will be directly related to the functional assignment of that region in general, if it's responding at all to narrative semantics. So I don't think what we showed was that other people were wrong. I think it's not a matter of wrong versus a right. It's a matter of how much data you get out of your experiment. And, MRI is pretty expensive. You guys may not notice it yet because you're graduate students, but your advisors definitely notice it. I don't know, MRI pretty much, just to pay for your magnet, is going to be about $300 an hour. If you manage to get a really rich donor who, why don't you just turn up the volume, Mark? Oh, all right. This just feels very unnatural. I do not like hearing myself. So if you have a rich donor who pays for your magnet, then you can, like some of the nice, cushy Ivy League institutions have, then you can scan for free and you don't notice it. But for most people, if your magnet's at a hospital or your magnet's at a state school like ours is, then you're going to have to pay for that time. And at $300 an hour, that's a lot of time. Plus, you have to pay the subject on top of that. At our scanner, it's actually much more expensive than $300 an hour because we have staff that we pay. So this adds up really, really quickly. So in something that is this costly, my view is that it is incumbent on you, the user, certainly if you're paying for it yourself, to be as efficient as possible. So when we do an experiment, I think of experimental design in a weird way that nobody else does. I think about bits per dollar. How many bits of information am I getting per dollar I spend? And by bits, I mean I want to calculate the mutual information between the things I manipulated in my experiment and the things I measured. So, right, remember mutual information is the difference in entropy between one end of your communication channel and the other. So in this context, the communication channel is the MRI machine. So I've got some entropy in my experiment. If I have two conditions, then I have essentially 1 bit of entropy. So I have a very low possible information I can recover from each voxel. I can only recover 1 bit, right? If I use a natural story, then I have a lot of entropy in my input end, okay? So now I send this information through my channel, which is my MRI machine, and I measure some entropy at the end. Now, MRI, you know, I'll make this really quick. Your MRI machine has 20-bit DACs. The files that Siemens uses to store the data are not 20-bit files, they're 16-bit files. The NITP format is not 16-bit file format, it's 12 bits. Siemens decided many years ago that they didn't really need 12 bits because you didn't deserve them, so they were going to save 4 bits for themselves, so they only give you 8 bits. Now, now Siemens gave you the best 8 bits. They have class, but they're still only 8 bits. And then on top of that, actually not all of that is real data. Basically, you get about 5 bits. Each TR, you get about 5 bits per voxel. So you have a bunch of entropy in your input. You have a bunch of entropy on your output. You can calculate that. You can integrate that over an hour, and you can calculate how many dollars you're paying for each bit of information. And I would argue that you need to optimize that, because otherwise you're wasting money. And if you're wasting money, you're probably wasting time too, and nobody wants to waste money or time. So even though this approach seems like it's more work, I would argue it's actually less work than the normal way of doing things. All right. We're going to just get through as much of this as we can. So I wanted to rant for about 10 minutes, which might be almost all the time I have, on the replication crisis we have in neuroscience. Now, you are probably all familiar with this if you're on Twitter or plugged into any crappy Murdoch newspaper. That there was a recent study published by Tom Nichols' group that basically said that all MRI studies published in the last 20 years were wrong. That was essentially the press summary said that 40,000 published MRI studies were to be questioned because of type 1 error inflation, dramatic type 1 error inflation. Now, unfortunately, Tom and his friends did a really good job of getting attention from the press, not really the kind of attention we want, the kind of negative attention saying MRI is all crap, but they had actually overstated the case. They had done their simulations to show that there's type 1 error inflation in one particular form of cluster analysis of SPM data, which probably on the more recent correction that Tom published last week probably only affects at most 3,500 studies. But still, 3,500 is a lot, right? And these are dramatic inflations of type 1 error, right? Where the false positive rate, instead of being 5% like you would like, are going to be more like 70%. And their argument is this is bad. You know, we don't want to have a bunch of false positives because that means we're going to have a replication problem. And you guys have all seen variants of this from, you know, the dead salmon experiment and so on. All these experiments claiming that there's something fundamentally wrong with MRI. And it's always ambiguous whether something's fundamentally wrong with MRI or something's fundamentally wrong with the way we do MRI. And I would argue it's the latter. It's not the MRI that's the problem, it's what we're doing with the MRI is the problem. And actually, this isn't a problem that just affects MRI, this affects all of biomedicine. So the person who's most famous for pointing this out is John Ioannidis, who's now at Stanford. I think he did a lot of his early stuff at Tufts. But basically, he's been pointing out for years and years and years that type 1, that due to a combination of problems, statistical significance is, in practice, inflating our type 1 error rate far beyond what we would expect. Remember, type 1 error is reporting that there's a significant result when there is not a significant result. And Ioannidis and other people have pointed out that actually the type 1 error rate, even though you think it's 5%, is actually much higher in all of the reported literature. And the reason has to do with the perverse incentives of science. Basically, you can publish a positive result. You can't publish a null result. People have to publish or they perish. So therefore, people do everything they can to publish a positive result. Well, what can you do to publish a positive result? Well, there's a million things you can do. You can run your study not double-blinded. You can p-hack and try a bunch of different statistical tests until you get one that works. There's a million things you can do that will give you a significant result, but actually give you a high type 1 error rate. And every possible way you can scam significance values, you can bet there are multiple people out there using that particular scam, either consciously or unconsciously, to inflate their significance values, because that's what science is rewarded for. So this is a serious problem, and it's a serious problem in all of biomedicine and psychology. Anybody, basically, any field which is relying on significance rather than predictive models has this problem. I should note that this goes way back. People have known there was a problem in this, of this form for a very, very long time. Here's a 1997 paper about psychology. But actually, the first people who noticed that there was a problem with statistical significance were Neyman and Pearson, who came along soon after Sir Ronald Fisher proposed statistical significance as a test. And people were interpreting significance values as continuous variables, as essentially giving you a confidence that the result was real, which is not what significance tells you. And Neyman and Pearson were the ones that came along and corrected it by introducing the decision criteria. And our use of statistical significance today is sort of the Frankenstein stepchild of a combination of Ronald Fisher and Neyman Pearson. We don't actually follow either one. We follow some aggregate average of both of them, which is not a good thing to do. So this is an old problem that we've known about for a very long time. There are a lot of different aspects of this problem. I actually just put this paper in here. This is there are two people who have written a lot on this. One is Ioannidis, who's at Stanford. One is Gelman, who's at Princeton, I think. Mostly not about MRI, but more generally about psychology. Gelman has done a lot of psychology stuff, and Ioannidis has done a lot of biomedicine stuff. And I actually just put this paper up here because I like the title of it, because it's what I say a lot. Statistical significance is not significant. And the reason people think statistical significance is significant is because it says significance right in the title. It's the same reason people think that functional connectivity is connectivity, because it says connectivity right in the title, so it must be connectivity. It's not. It's not connectivity, and it's not significance. And more importantly, statistical significance is not importance and has nothing to do with importance or effect size, nothing whatsoever. A significant result has no relationship to or impact on how much of the variance your model will predict. There are a bunch of people who have fought back against, this is from Harold Pashler, who's done a lot of work at UCSD on this issue as well. There have been a lot of people fighting back with various arguments about this replication crisis we have and this inflation of type 1 error. The arguments have been of multiple forms. For example, well, it's really not that bad a problem, or really if you have a really strong theory, then it's not that bad a problem, or it doesn't matter we don't replicate anything because after all, if you replicate with two different methods and they kind of give you the same result, when you squint, that's good enough. All of these arguments are made. They're all, in my opinion, invalid. This is a really serious problem. The problem is, if you can't trust what other people publish to be real, how are we ever going to make progress in science? We can't replicate anything. We can't replicate everything. It's impossible to replicate everything. We would have to use all the resources of the planet to replicate everything. That's an insane thing to do. What we need to do is change our systems so that we can trust without needing to replicate every single thing. Studies of the same thing. Another aspect of this that's been known for a long time is the file drawer phenomenon, right? So remember, the file drawer phenomenon is you do an experiment and it's not significant, so you put it in the file drawer, you don't publish it. You do an experiment, it is significant, then you publish it. So if all that happened was that there were 20 times more experiments than published experiments, then we could infer that almost every result that was published could likely have been due to chance. Now, of course, things aren't probably that bad. It's probably more like there's 3 times as many experiments as there are published experiments. But that still means your type 1 error rate is a lot higher than you think. So there have been since everybody has acknowledged we have a problem, there have been a lot of proposals for how to deal with this problem. Some of them I think are smart and good, and some of them are not. The first is that all data should be open. We should just open up all the data to everybody immediately upon publication, because then everybody can just check everybody else's data and make sure that it's right, make sure they didn't make any mistakes. And in an ideal world where we all had infinite time, that would be a great thing to do. And I actually do believe in open data because the taxpayers paid for all of these data, and therefore they should be available for others to use. But just opening data won't solve the replication problem on its own, because I have had open data out on the web for a long time, and I can tell you that very few people actually use those open data or check them. So just having the data available won't cause people to check the data unless there's already suspicion that there's something wrong with the data. There are other problems with opening data that mainly have to do with attribution. So for example, in this semantics experiment that I told you about earlier, we're probably going to publish, just based on the papers we already have mapped out, 5 or 6 papers on that same data set. So if the requirement for us was that all of the data be opened up from the very first paper that we publish, that would mean that all of the other work that could be done by my students and my postdocs who actually suffered for that data would be done by somebody else, and I consider that to be unfair to my students and postdocs. So I think the open data initiative is a great thing to do, and I think once you finish publishing all the primary papers, your data should be opened. That's the policy we follow in our lab, and I think that's the policy that all labs should follow. All of our data is on a resource called crcns.org, which is collaborative research in computational neuroscience. It's run by the NSF. And our neurophysiology data is put up there, and our MRI data is put up there. But there are other avenues for putting your data. You can put your data on NeuroVault, for example, and it'll just be there for anybody to use. So I would argue that the only thing that really matters in all of this is not statistical significance, but effect size. And you can calculate effect size using classical statistical metrics, which involve a lot of assumptions, or you can calculate what you really wanted, rather than effect size, which is prediction accuracy. The only thing that really matters in science is prediction accuracy, because of course the whole point of science is to build a model that predicts. The only reason the government is paying us any money is to build models that predict. When they're not paying us to enjoy ourselves. The government doesn't care whether we enjoy ourselves, and science certainly doesn't care. So really the reason we have jobs is to build models that predict. And if we're not building models that predict, then we're not doing our jobs and we shouldn't be getting money. And so we have to be reporting predictions and effect size. And that means that since the only way I would argue to estimate prediction accuracy or effect size correctly is to collect separate estimation and validation data sets, or as they're sometimes known, separate fit and test data sets, then I would argue that every single study needs to be collecting 2 data sets, a fit set and a test set. If you don't do that, you can't have any guarantee at all that you're not just overfitting the heck out of your data. So in my perfect world, first of all, every single journal would require reports of effect size. The number of journals that require reports of effect size today is, as far as I know, 0. So we have some ways to go to do that. And secondly, every study would report effect size the right way by collecting 2 data sets. Although that might not always be possible, it should usually be possible. But I'm not as adamant about that as I am about just journals requiring it. I think journals should always require effect size, and if they did, that most of this replication crisis would go away. All right, so talk a little bit about measurement technology. In any area of science, there's kind of 2 things that limit you. One is theory and one is measurement. And of course, in every area of science, both of those things limit you all the time. But in any specific area of science, one of those things is limiting you at any specific point in time. And in MRI, many people think that the main problem we have with MRI and understanding MRI data is theory. We just don't have good enough psychological theories. I would argue that's not the problem. The problem is our measurement technology. That MRI is an amazing device. It works way better than anything else we have for non-invasive measurement of human brain activity, but it's fundamentally just collecting a pale shadow of all the data we need. And if we really want to have any hope of building really good predictive models, we need to improve MRI. And since we're not going to be able to improve the time resolution of MRI as long as we're relying on hemodynamics, and it's unlikely we'll be able to get that past that soon, although Mark may have some magic up his sleeve he hasn't told me about. The one thing we probably can do is increase the spatial resolution. So, what we really like to do is get to this level. Here up on the top is a voltage-sensitive dye and a calcium imaging map from Clay Reed's lab showing that individual neurons are orientation tuned according to the orientation map you get from voltage-sensitive dyes. So this suggests that if our MRI machine could recover something at the level of a cortical column, a sort of a voltage-sensitive dye level measurement, that we could recover a lot of this local information that's buried in these functional maps that we can't currently see, because current MRI at the level of 2 or 3 millimeters is measuring essentially a whole hypercolumn, a bunch of columns together, and all the individual attributes of those columns are all averaged together and averaged away. So that would be what we would like to do. Both fMRI and electrocorticography are kind of limited right now in that they can only record hypercolumns. MRI, there are a variety of methods we might use to try to get down in spatial resolution, and there are several groups working to create new electrocorticography grids for doing this in humans to get down to the column level. Right, this is my hypercolumn slide. So there have been several attempts, actually, almost since the dawn of MRI, to try to do columnar imaging and to try to recover sort of the functional properties of columns. The first one that I know of was by Ravi Menon, who tried to look for ocular dominance columns in primary visual cortex. And there is a reason for looking at ocular dominance columns, because ocular dominance is organized at a larger scale than is orientation. So ocular dominance columns are closer to the scale of a hypercolumn, and so you might guess that you could recover ocular dominance columns. If you read this paper, which is a great attempt to recover this information, you may well decide that they probably weren't successful in doing it. But people have continued to try to do this, so more frequently, here's a paper from the Minnesota group, Essa Yakub and Camille Urabil and those guys, where they also tried to recover ocular dominance columns. And this paper suggests that now in 2007, we can probably maybe get ocular dominance columns. But of course, ocular dominance columns are not the level you want because they're organized at a scale larger than regular cortical columns. You need to go down to the scale of orientation columns to really have something that you feel confident you could use to recover columnar architecture across the whole brain. So there have been attempts to recover orientation columns. In fact, the Minnesota group published a nice paper a few years ago trying to recover orientation columns. So this is their ocular dominance map on the left. This is their orientation map on the right on a flattened V1. And they argued in this paper, oh, look, we can get orientation columns, we can get ocular dominance columns, and we can get orientation columns. MRI's awesome, we rule. And that's great, you know, but if you really had orientation columns, you would assume that when you measure them across 2 different days, the pattern would be the same. And they very nicely provided the information across days. Here on the left is day 1, here on the right is day 2. Oops, wait. Is it day 1 and day 1? Oh, sorry, here it's the top and bottom, I guess. It's day 1 and day 2. So here are their 2 orientation column maps. They're supposed to be aligned, and so they should look the same. And as you can tell, these don't look the same, right? These are not the same maps, which probably means that just, you know, nice try, but no orientation columns. And I don't know of any study since then that has done any better than this. So we don't have any MRI signals yet that are at a spatial resolution that we can pull out columns. So there are several attempts to do this. I'm involved with one of them, with this guy, Dave Feinberg, who's running kind of a consortium grant with the people at Martino Center are building the coils. I'm involved in evaluating stuff since I don't actually do any coil building. There are several other groups involved. And the idea is to basically, it's really the dumbest idea in the world. Let's make tinier coils. After all, if we have just one big coil in the brain, we get low resolution MRI. If we go to 12 channels or 32 channels, we get higher resolution MRI. What happens if we go to, say, 256 channels? Well, we might have a problem with depth, but if we really care about cortical imaging, we should be able to maybe record columns at a really high spatial resolution. So this is what they've been working on. This just shows you, I can't remember, to be honest, if this is real data or simulated data. So I'm going to be agnostic about whether it's real or simulated in this talk. So here's a 12-channel coil. Here's a 32-channel coil, which is your standard high-end Siemens coil. And here is, what does that say, a 96-channel coil, right? And so you can see the signal to noise here should be higher on the outer sort of rind of cortex. And then by the time you get down to the middle of the brain, the signal to noise won't be any better or will even be worse because, of course, the sensitivity of a coil is proportional to its diameter, right? The depth sensitivity. Now, if this was real data, it would have been built by the little coil building gnomes in the Martino Center, and maybe it would have had an active shimming, mechanism in it, and so on, to be a really high resolution coil system. But there are other things you can do that might even be better. So you remember I mentioned earlier that one of the biggest, I'm going to be done in like 2 minutes, Mark. One of the biggest problems in MRI is the distance of the brain from the coil, right? And if you use any standard coil that is made for, a large number of humans, it's going to be much bigger than most people's heads. And one easy way to increase signal to noise is not to make tinier and tinier coils, but to make coils that go right on the person's head. And you could imagine a system where you would actually customize the coils for each individual subject. And that's another direction of this grant that's being done with Mickey Lustig and our lab at Berkeley. Mickey started making these flexible coils. He actually made them because he wanted to sew them into baby blankets to do neonatal imaging. So now instead of the babies, the problem is they're changing their size pretty radically over a very short span of time, and no hospital can afford an array of baby coils that are optimized for all sizes of babies, right? So the idea is, well, what if we make flexible coils in a blanket and just wrap it right over the baby, and then the coils will always be as next to the baby as possible, and you can solve the problem that way. Now, this has issues because the coils are now no longer in a known geometry, so you have to use tricky statistical methods for deconvolving the data and reconstructing the images, but that's actually what Mickey specializes in, so he's not afraid of that. So once you have these flexible coils, which are actually just made with a silk screening process, you can do a dumb experiment like just tape them on the back of somebody's head. So you tape them on their head, you stick them in the MRI machine, and you get an anatomical image. And you can see this anatomical image actually looks really, really good. Taping 4 big coils on the back of somebody's head basically gives you an anatomical image of the back of the head as good as Siemens' $200,000 coil, okay? So this suggests that this might be a really good avenue to pursue. And we're pursuing this by combining it with a little project that we've been working on for a while that we call the head case. Basically what we do is we take a laser scan of your head, and we take a laser scan of the 32-channel coil, and then we use a 3D printing process, or now we actually mill these things, and we mill a helmet that that is just for you, and it fits directly around your head, and it fits inside of the coil. So now you can't move because all of the space between your head and the coil is filled with plastic. So this prevents motion. It prevents motion even in our subjects who have been in the magnet for 200 hours. They still move. They cough, they breathe, they swallow. So this prevents a lot of the motion, and it makes sure that if you do a multi-session MRI experiment where the person comes out of the magnet and goes back in, now their head is always in the isocenter of the coils. So you don't end up with the hot spots of the coils shifting across sessions, which is one of the main problems you have with cross-session alignment. So this thing works great. I should just mention that the guy who's been working on this project for the last 2 years is starting a company called CaseForge to build these things. And the way this will work is, say UCLA wants to have these flexible coils, these head cases. So James Gao will send you a cell phone with a laser scanner on it. You take the person's head, you put a swimming cap on them, you take the laser scanner, you scan their head. The software on the phone sends it back to Berkeley. There's an automated milling machine that automatically takes the scan, adjusts it all, sticks in the middle of the coil, figures out the CAD/CAM model for the milling machine, and then mills it out of foam, and then it goes in the mail the next day and gets sent to you by next day air, so you have it tomorrow. So that should work, and basically all of the pieces of this are together, and we're beta testing this now. But that has nothing to do with the interesting part, which is these flexible coils. In the end, what we want is to be able to take these customized individual head cases and combine them with customized individual silkscreen printed coils to optimize the signal to noise for any individual subject's brain and for any individual experiment. So that's about it. Because I'm over time, that's all I'm going to talk about. Thanks for your time. Lunch. Lunch? Questions? Lunch?
Questions?
Coffee? Coffee.
Questions?